And welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Rusty, and this is my channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal. And welcome to day 2 of Found Footage Week. Now, first let me tell you something I discovered. Found footage movies are hard to script and hard to narrate. I thought about that as I was scripting and narrating them. And I think it's because found footage movies are so visual, right? They're so, maybe even more visual than a regular movie because so much is dependent on the little things that you see. So it's kind of hard to, I found it kind of hard to narrate or script them. But I'm good, and we will persevere. So we're going to begin day 2. Day 1 of Found Footage Week was actually also day 7 of Shark Week. So yes, this is day 2, and this is a little independent found footage horror movie called Chest. Yes. Now, Chest, I even got a nice little personal note from the director, thanking me for supporting indie horror, which if you've been around my channel, you know that I do that. I'm always asking people to support independent horror movies and physical media. So there you go. This is Chest. Now, Chest was released in 2022. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, Chest was written and directed by the director who signed that note for me. This is Aaron Irons. It stars Dean Shortland and, you had to do it, didn't you? Jessejames, Locorriere? French-Canadian, maybe? I don't know. And Ted Welch. People in your names. Can't you just have a simple name? But, yes. Chest revolves around, it opens with the title card, which is that in 2016, a film crew disappeared while filming an episode of their web series called Dark Appalachia, which is a show about the myths and legends and darkness of the Appalachian people and mountain and woods and so forth. So we then go we bounce forward to 3 years later. It's 2019, and we see 2 police officers getting a call for service. They show up to this very disheveled, bushy-haired guy walking down the road in nothing but a pair of tattered shorts with a backpack sack kind of thing. And he goes crazy on them, and, that's it. We then are flashed back, and we begin to see the footage where we are introduced to the characters, and like the crazy guy, he ate the throat out of one of the cops, so bad for that dibble. So we're introduced to our crew, which is Mark and Yancey. A little side note, my brother's name is Yancey as well, so that was kind of cool. David, Isabella, Stephanie, and so yeah, we're introduced to them, and they're now planning a new episode of their show Dark Appalachia on a legend that they've heard about a mysterious box. There's a cave with a mysterious box in it, or chest, or something like that. They're not sure. And they've heard about that. Actually, it's because we find out that Mark actually grew up in the area, so he kind of had heard the legend as a kid. So they decide that that's what they're going to do. So we then flash forward to 2 months later, where we see Dave, Mark, and Isabella leave with Yancey and Stephanie to go to the location to discuss the mystery, to discover the mystery of the chest. And on the way, they have a lot of, cool dialogue where they talk about myths and what makes an urban legend and stuff like that. They then go to this person that they're going to interview, supposedly his father. His name is Jeff, and supposedly his father is part of this myth because he discovered the box, the chest. So they show up at his place, and he claims that he never went back to open it or anything like that. So they really don't know what's going on. The rumor is that, the box is cursed in some way. It's an urban legend, is what it is. Or in this case, a rural legend. So, they show up to Jeff's for the interview at this really old house, no electricity, anything like that. They go in and they start talking to him about it. He tells a lot of stories about it. He claims that his father and his friend found the box, but they never went back to open it. But they never got a chance because the father committed suicide and the guy was killed. The friend was killed all within a year of this happening. Now that's what they told him. So Jeff warns them about looking for it, the Crazy Ralph element. Steph ends up kind of sneaking around into the house when none of them is looking, and she finds the mother that goes completely wiggy on her. Or they find his grandmother, supposedly old with dementia and stuff like that, who completely freaks out, warns them not to go, tells them they should leave. So Stephanie runs out there and tells the others in the Jeep, because they're all like, we've got to go now. Because, who was it? Mark? Yeah, I think Mark had went in. And this, although, for Mark, though, it only excited him further, whereas it kind of scared everyone else. And they're all like wanting to, let's get the hell out of here. So Jeff ends up going back, talking to Jeff and apologizing while the others are in the Jeep. And comes back and tells them that he apologized. And that he has now hired Jeff as a guide to take them to the box. So, this makes Stephanie really upset. She's the one I identify personality-wise with the most. I'm sweet. I'm nice. I'm loyal. I'm a very good, thing. But I'm a bitch. Like a really total bitch. So, I will... As long as you don't cross me, I'm fine. I'm the nicest person in the world. And I will put up with your silly shit. I will do whatever you want. I'll play along with your crap up to a certain point. But I am going to be a bitch about it. I'm going to be the sarcastic bitch behind you. That's like, yeah, what the fuck? I'm here. I'm doing it with you. I'm supporting you, but you have to accept what comes with it. And that is, I'm going to bitch about it. So I kind of identified with her. I thought she was pretty cool. So they stop by a bar and talk to the bartender, kind of tell them, in this small little Appalachian town, sort of tells him what they're up to. Him and another guy tell some really cool stories, and we'll talk about that later, about all of the stories you hear in this movie. The atmosphere is very, very draws you in, especially if you happen to be from that kind of location. I am in Northwest Florida. I am from the South, although half my life England, America. So I'm like, I definitely understand it. I've definitely been around this kind of environment and these kinds of people. So I, of course, was really drawn into the stories and the discussions and the way that they talked and stuff. So They talked to them about the Granger family. That was Jeff's father. Um, and the legend and the chained chest and the cave, and he tells them where the cave should be at a place called an area called Jeffrey's Hell, and he explains that. He tells the story about Jeff's dad, the true story, because it turns out Jeff had lied. Okay, his dad and the friend, they didn't go and find the chest and then never get around to going back because they died. Jeff actually, his dad actually went insane, murdered his mother, and murdered the friend. So he went completely crazy. You know, he murdered the friend, Bob, and his wife. And they were also confused about how did you talk to Jeff anyway, because nobody's lived at that house for years. So I mean, for a second there, you thought it was like they were ghosts or something, right? Because nobody was supposed to live there, which explained why there was no electricity. So they were a little confused about that, how he even talked to Jeff. But, you know, because they've been gone for years, but obviously they've come back. So they go off to meet Jeff. They arrive at their rented cabin close to this area. So they've rented a cabin and they get settled in, and then the next day they take off to meet up with Jeff. Now, as they start their hike with Jeff, who's carrying nothing but beer and some snacks, I mean, you know, so as they take off with him, Jeff actually admits that, okay, what I said about my dad was a lie. But to tell you the truth, I was young. I was a little kid. I don't really remember much about it. But yes, I do know that he did something very bad and I lied about it. Let's get over it, which they do. So, you know, they take off for the trip. Stephanie bitching the whole way. Everybody else kind of enjoying themselves. They settle down for camp with Jeff. And, the campfire scene was very, very cool to me because it was all of this philosophical talk, just sort of like it was in the van. The writing in this movie is really excellent and really kept me engaged and kept me interested. As the story was progressing, I was also just really interested in hearing all of these people talk about their different stories and everything. They talk about their history, their childhoods, things like that. So there's a lot of good philosophical writing. They go to sleep, and then they hear a bunch of noises, and two of them, I think it was Mark and David, they end up getting up, and there's these three really strange people on horses that are just staring at them and kind of trot through the campsite, won't speak to them or anything like that, and finally just laugh. They kind of giggle and laugh and go on. Now, the next morning when they get up, Jeff is gone, but his stuff's still there, but he's gone. Stephanie, of course, starts freaking out, and Isabella too. Yancey as well. They're all like, what the fuck's going on? Something happened last night. But of course, Mark doesn't want to say, because if he says, he's scared that they will bail on this project, which he is so invested in. So, he finally ends up admitting that something happened, and he showed them the video of the people on horseback, which of course makes them even more nervous. She claims that when she sees the video, she says that those were people. She recognized those people from the photos that she had looked at, because she looked at all the photos on the wall when she was back at Jeff's house. So she said that those people were in the photos that she had seen on the walls. So there's another little bit. They end up running across this weird hunter who was really cool. And I liked the way that he talked and interacted with them, and the stuff that he said was pretty cool. They, once again, more warnings. Why don't people ever listen to warnings? Stubborn, hard-headed. Curiosity killed who? The cat and its owners and everybody else. Don't you people know that by now? So, they end up continuing anyway. Steph sprains her ankle. They do make it to this mysterious waterfall. They, camp out and are like, well, we're going to look around. And they do manage to find not a cave, but a mine shaft. So they're like, well, that must be what people were talking about. The cave is actually a mine shaft. Well, Isabella, David, and Mark, they decide that they're going to splunk down it. And Stephanie and Yancey are going to wait up here for a few hours. I promise if we don't come back, go get help. We're going to check it out. So they go down there and leave Steph and Yancey up at the campsite, which is right over there next to the cave or the mine shaft. So they stay at the entrance. Steph does notice this weird symbol on a tree, which is the symbol on this disc. I'm not sure which is upside down or not, but that symbol. So she sees that symbol on a tree. It starts getting dark. Mark and them are down there. They hear weird shit down there. Stephanie also tells Yancey about how that symbol, I saw that in the house as well. So we're kind of like cult territory, in my opinion. So they're worried about the other three. They get a campfire going, and Mark and them are down there, and they do end up finding the chest. And it's not even very big, it's like a foot locker, and it's covered in chains, and they try to get it open, and one of the weird things that Mark says is that if you get close to the chest and put your hand around it, you can feel a breeze coming from the chest, that's weird. Now, it's at this point that I started thinking what we find out to be the truth later. But it was at this point that I started kind of going, I don't think that chest is a chest, so to speak. But they're lost when they found the chest. They're lost down there in this cave system. So they're kind of stuck in the room with the chest. They don't know where to go, what to do. Yancey and Stephanie are up there at the camp. They're, of course, getting spooked, as you would, or any intelligent person would. They're hearing noises and that something's outside and stuff like that. And that's when shit really starts hitting the fan. They can hear someone running. They hear sounds. Finally, Yancey, he's like, I'm going to look. And she's like, no. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do that. So I was really anxious now. I mean, it really did have my anxiety level up. So when he opened up that tent, something grabbed him, and it got me really, really good. Because, I was like, oh shit, what the fuck was that? That was literally my reaction, and I yelled it out loud. There was no LOL, there was an SOL. A scream out loud. Because, I was like, and I knew it was coming, right? I mean, he's fixing to open the thing. There's noises. There's something out there. Of course something's going to grab him. It did not protect me, however, because this hand thing, it was some kind of claw. It was good. and it made me jump and it made me scream out loud. I'm like, oh shit, what the fuck was that? Okay, all right, we're going. Let's go. We're into this shit now. So I'm like getting into it. It grabs Yancey. We start flashing back and forth between the tent, these two, and them stuck down there. So at the same time that this thing grabs a hold of Yancey and pulls him out, this dark, smoky apparition like comes up from the chest that Mark was sitting on. He was sitting on the chest, and is like envelops him, and he like makes some weird noises. So it comes over Mark, who then like opens up. He like attacks and kills David with this big giant rock. So things have went south quick. He kills them with rock. He kills them with a rock, and then goes after Isabella and strangles her. So we flash back, and Steph is like running through the woods. She sees Yancey for this split second, and let me tell you, just like I do with all found footage movies, I definitely watch a lot of scenes on frame step. So it's like I'm like, okay, I saw so much shit, and I will back it up and I will put it on frame step. What was that? There it is. And that's how I get to see shit. Because, in found footage movies, things are like really, really fast. Like, what was that? I don't know what was that. Well, Blu-rays can help you find out what that was. And so I'm like freeze framing on Yancey's body because it was so quick. And I'm like, yeah, he does look dead, doesn't he? So she keeps running. We see Mark open the chest, and there's a hatchet in it, which wasn't there before. So he takes it, and you can tell he's like chopping up David's body and stuff like that. So we're then back to Steph. I told you this was hard to narrate. We're then back to Steph, who she starts hearing Mark like calling her name. But we know where Mark's at, or we know where Mark was at. But so she starts hearing him call her name. She climbs into this old building where we start seeing flashes of like bodies. Like there was one scene where the chest is open and you see what was David's. His legs are hanging out of the chest. They're all covered in blood and stuff like that. So we're seeing these little flashes while she's trying to find Mark, that she hears his voice. Filmed very, very well. It was my tension was through the roof. So we see flashes of bodies in the chest. We see flashes of Mark closing the lid with himself in it. And you're like, well, honey, I know that little bitty chest. You didn't fit 3 bodies in there. I don't care how much you cut them up. Okay. Then climb in it yourself, and he's like closing the lid. And I'm like, that's a gateway to hell is what that is. So as she runs out of that house, and as she's running by, you see flashes of like people standing in the doorway in these long culty robes, just like they were wearing when they were on the horse and stuff. So yeah, she finally she still hears Mark, but then after she sees them, she runs like hell. She does make it to the road, and that's where we see Mark like closing the lid on himself with the bodies in the chest. So when she gets to the road, she sees a truck coming, and she screams for help, and the truck stops and picks her up. Now, when she climbs into the truck, it's this redneck dude is like, what's wrong? What's going on and stuff like that. And they start driving, and he asks her if she likes the song that's playing on the radio. And, she's like, how far are we from the police station, and stuff like that. And he's like, well, I'm sorry, but, I'm not going to let you out. And he had like automatically locked the doors and stuff. And he's like, I'm not going to let you out. So she's like, are you fucking stoned? Because I've got a gun, yeah? I've got a gun. And he's like, yeah. And if you reach for it, and he pulls out this big, giant hunter's knife, look like something Rambo would be jealous of. And he's like, I know you've got a gun. And if you reach for it, I'm going to stab you multiple times with this. So that was it, Then all of a sudden he grabs her and he chloroforms her. And he had said, before he did that, he was like, we can't let you go because you let it out. You let it out and we can't let you go, and there's only one way to help you. So he chloroforms her, ties her up, and then continues driving after he makes this phone call, and you can hear that it's Jeff. So he's on the phone call with Jeff. And when she does come back to, she manages to get out of the truck, where he then covers her, pours petrol all over her, and then sets her on fire. Because, she's tried to get away from him. It was really creepy, and it was really intense, because he just kept acting like he had no choice. That, you let it out, this is the only way to free you, and typical cult stuff that you would hear. So he sets her on fire and burns her alive, supposedly, and leaves. So, boom, we're back to the present. And we see an FBI agent and a detective standing outside of this window in what is obviously a police station. And she informs the detective of the tests that have come back. And she informs him that the person in there, which we know is that crazy guy that the cops that attacked the cops, right? She's like, that crazy guy in there is one of our 3 missing people. David, Isabel, and Mark. So we realized that they were listed as missing. All 5 of them were, actually. But he was she informed him that he is one of the 3 missing people, and that the body parts are some of the body parts in the bag. So that sack that he was carrying actually had a few body parts in it. Was from the other 2 people that were missing. Was in the backpack. However, there was no pieces of the other 2, Stephanie and Yancey. So she said, and here's another weird thing. He's had some kind of crude surgery on him, like his appendix was taken out or something. But the scar tissue on this crude surgery, which according to his medical records he never had. So this crude surgery, like where his appendix was removed, the scar tissue on it was 10 to 15 years old. But he's only been missing for 3 years. So that further confirmed my hypothesis that that box was something else. So their tests, their blood work and stuff also proved, however they would prove this, but that he had been living on nothing but raw meat for these 3 years that he's been missing. So they go in with this weirdness and interview him. Now, he won't speak at first. She shows him photos of the other people and tries to talk to him. And then he finally speaks in his normal self. And he says that it's not a box, it's a doorway. And they don't know what he's talking about. And they keep, asking him to repeat, And he's like, it's not a box, it's a doorway. And they're like, no, you need to explain this. And then, his eyes turn black. And he freezes and his eyes turns black. And he says, oh, I'll explain it to you. And then he breaks free. And he starts beating the shit out of him. And he, literally crushes that detective up against the wall. And goes completely nuts. You see the FBI agent, the lady, crawling in front of the camera and then being pulled. You see little whiffs of that black smoke that you had seen back in the cave when it came over Mark. And he all were sucked through the wall, and the interview room is empty because he brings the portal with him, I guess. So he's like a demon now or something. So it ends there. And then in the end card, it says that Stephanie and Yancey, plus FBI agent Kara Mills and Detective Gardner, have never been found. They do know that this Mark guy, he's never been seen since either. So they knew what happened to Mark because they had him. They knew what happened to David and Isabella because part of their body parts were in that bag. But they never found anything of Steph and Yancey. And they never found these two detectives who are now missing as well, along with Mark, who's never been seen again. So there you go. That is Chest. And I was very impressed. I was very impressed with this movie. I really liked the storytelling. The writing was phenomenal. I really liked the writing. I liked this whole thing too, and it's kind of set up for a sequel, Hey, if I was a producer, man, I'd give you a couple million right now to make a sequel and continue the story. But I had a lot of fun with this. I'm very glad that I bought it. You can go to the website and purchase it. It might be available in some other places. I don't know. Now, I do remember previewing it, someone told me, don't hold me to it, but someone told me it was on Tubi, or Tubi, whatever the place that is. Y'all know I don't use streaming services. But I did go and look at it up until the first commercial, just because, I will go and preview something is it filmed? Is it a normal movie, or is it some bullshit? So I did go and preview it, and at that time it was on Tubi, so maybe it still will be on there. You can go and watch it. But of course, as always, I prefer if you support indie horror. Yes. Support indie horror, support physical media, and you can get it at the website. That's where I bought this. chestmovie.com. Is that what it says? That is really little writing. Reading glasses. Yeah. chestmovie.com. No, I'm serious. That was tiny. It's right there. Do you see that little tiny thing? I'm not blind or anything, but good God. I can tell you every name of every movie across the room, but when it comes to teeny tiny words, no. Anyway, why am I defending reading glasses? So there you go. I gave this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I upped it to 8 on International Movie Database because, as you've heard me say before, I always round up because International Movie Database, Rotten Tomatoes. God, I hate that place. Letterboxd. They all hate horror. You know what I'm saying? If a movie gets near or is over 5 on International Movie Database, it must be like an epic masterpiece of a horror film to get above 5. Critics and the mainstream general public just are very unfair to horror films. This movie is absolutely great. I love it. Check it out if you can. Like I said, I do know that at one time it was on Tubi, where you can watch it. Or you can go and buy it for your collection. I'm very, very glad to have it in my collection. And I will see you in day 3 of Found Footage Week. Day 2, Chest from 2022 by Aaron Irons, directed and written by. And yes, great cast, great story, great environment, great atmosphere. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. That's a good found footage movie. And I will see you in the next one. Love you, miss you. Bye-bye. Keep rocking very, very hard. And keep screaming, but only when appropriate, which is every day you wake up these days.